I was legitimately scared because like I don't have any internet, I can't communicate from the outside world, and I was just. Have you ever been in a situation where you're just in the jungle, looking above and praying, when is that plane coming?
No, I have not.
I was like, oh, and that was like, oh, that was scary. Yeah.
Recently, USA Today released an analysis saying that America's coronavirus might be at its most dangerous point. And if you're feeling like most people of the world, this level of instability likely leads to feelings of fear, anxiety, and stress. And out of all of my friends who know what this feels like, what this lifestyle is like, Jasper stands out among all of them.
So I guess I would classify as a digital nomad, meaning like I don't really have a place that I stay. If we're traveling, jumping from country to country, and now I'm here, you know.
When we say digital nomad, that's just a really fancy and 2020 way of saying you're homeless.
Yeah, technically.
Jasper is someone that constantly travels the globe to create content that can be shared online. He films mission documentaries and does photography work. In fact, you might have actually seen some of his work on the Hope channel on a show called The Lineage Journey. In fact, a few of his photos have even been featured by National Geographic. But as for Jasper himself, to do the work that we enjoy, he actually has to live out of a suitcase without any permanent place to call home. So in today's episode, we're going to start with a most unusual story, a time where Jasper thought that he might die. Why? Well, because Jasper decided to go to North Korea. And how do you even get into North Korea? Isn't it like closed off to foreigners?
You can pay someone to bring you to North Korea.
So if you bribe the right person, you get in.
Yeah, so they bring you in, and then they like hand you over to a tour guide in North Korea. And
okay.
You pay them, yeah.
What was the tour like?
Oh, it's crazy. I don't know. I mean, we could like spend hours describing North Korea, but think about North Korea as like 1995 or 1990. So it's like you going back in time. The hairstyle, the clothing.
Does everyone have everything. Like a bowl cut? Because I remember in the 90s I had a bowl cut.
Let's go back and see the pictures, but I'm not sure. But yeah, the hairstyle so different. The woman especially. Mm-hmm. For me, the man, I don't really remember. But the women.
Oh, because you were just looking at the women in North Korea.
Exposed. No, but yeah. The women that stand out for me, the hairstyles, the way they dress, the cars. So it's a little bit of from the 90s, the 80s kind of look. So growing up, I really want to see what North Korea is like, but I will not recommend it for people to do.
I don't think that anyone recommends going to North Korea.
Yeah.
I think anyone who recommends going to North Korea needs to see a doctor.
Yeah, I need help or something.
So what was the scariest part about your experience in North Korea?
The scariest part is filming illegally.
Yeah, because they don't want you to film or take photos.
Yeah, they're like.
But apparently, you said you had photos. So how did you do that?
I want to make a little disclaimer. Some of my friends were allowed to, but I don't know why I was not allowed to. Maybe because of the heightened security or what happened during that time with the Americans and all that kind of stuff. But when I went there, they were like, "Hey, you're not allowed to film." But I was able to gather some materials from North Korea because I was hiding it. Like this, but before,
you hid a camera in North. This is exactly what they tell tourists not to. Like, this is what happens when you see them on the news.
So this is you're not supposed to do this.
And you were doing this.
Yeah, well, they allowed me a camera, but the lady said I can only take photos if she says, "Oh, take photos here."
Oh, so it's like very controlled.
Yeah,
this is what we want you to see.
Yeah, but I was taking photos of things that I'm not supposed to take photos of.
Did they find out?
Yeah, before I left, they checked out my cameras. I was so scared because the security was like, "Hey," he was looking at all the photos and he started to delete stuff.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I thought I'll be reprimanded, put to jail, but they let me go. They just deleted all this stuff. But I mean, when I went to China, I saw all my files already gone.
Wow. Yeah. So were you able to get stuff?
Yeah, I bought a it's called Disc Drill. Shout out if you want to sponsor this program. Disc Drill.
So what does that do for you?
It recovers deleted items.
So as if taking illegal photos in North Korea wasn't enough, Jasper's conscience would be tried in an eerily familiar way when they asked his group to bow down to an image of the supreme leader.
I'm not sure if it's a Korean thing because you've seen Koreans, they bow down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's true of a lot of places in Asia.
Yeah, like Japanese and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm very conscientious about these stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they asked me to bow down to the statue of the North Korean supreme leader.
Oh.
And two of them actually, Kim Jong-un Un and Kim Jong-il, if I'm not mistaken. And they lined us up, and we were lining up, and the lady said, on the count of 3, all bow down to the image. And everyone bowed down except me. And you see this brown Filipino boy popping up.
Why? Why wouldn't you bow down?
I don't know. I just don't. I'm a firm believer of the 10 Commandments, and I say I don't want to bow down to any image. And I just felt like during that time, consensuously, though I don't think they're asking me to worship. The Bible talks about worship, but during that time, consensuously, I was like,
you're just like, no. This is my moment of faith and truth. I'm gonna not miss the boat.
But the funny thing is that the news probably would say the guy was killed because he disrespected him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because there's no call for worship during that time. So
even in the middle of all that, you're having this conflict in your heart, and you're afraid.
Yeah.
In addition to North Korea, Jasper's got a million other stories to share. From living in a van while traveling throughout the Arctic Circle, serving in leper colonies in China, and working with the indigenous people in the Masai Mara, Jasper's work has taken him all across the world, and oftentimes into trouble.
So we went to a very deep jungle in Papua, and I was left out because the pastors moved forward on some of the visitation in the churches, and I need to go back to the city. And the pastor said, "Don't worry, they'll pick you up in a few hours." And then I said, "Okay." And so I start giving up all my rations, my food, bro, like to people, the kids. I was like, "Oh, here's the fig bar and all these things," and I start giving up my clothes, because I'm saying goodbye.
Right. And I mean, for those who've never been on like a mission trip type sort of thing, this is kind of standard practice, right? Like whatever you come, be willing to give it away. Yeah, because
people need it. And I was like, okay, and then I waited until nighttime, and the plane never came for 3 days.
Why?
I don't know. I mean, I was talking to the pilot. There was a miscommunication. The pilot said he might have forgotten me or bad weather. I'm trying to figure it out. And I cannot, I was like, oh, this is it. I don't speak the language. Nothing, right? I don't have any food left.
So you're 3 days in the jungle by yourself.
No shower.
No shower.
No soap.
No
I gave everything. No toilet paper. I mean, there's a river filled with crocodiles, but I can't really go there.
So what do you do? How do you survive?
Oh, what the blessing is that you won't believe this, bro.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if they're official, but I met a Filipino there.
Oh, the one Filipino in
and
the
she's
jungle.
Probably an illegal logger who married an Indonesian who went there in the jungle, maybe cut trees or something. And he helped me out.
Wow.
I was able to eat. I'm a vegetarian, but I was able to eat fish because there's nothing. Yeah, so that was an interesting moment in my life. I was legitimately scared because I don't have any internet, I can't communicate from the outside world, and I was just. Have you ever been in a situation where you're just in the jungle, looking above and praying, when is that plane coming?
No, I have not.
I was like, oh, and that was like, oh, that was scary. Yeah, that was scary. I grew up in a very third world country, so it's different. The way we flush the toilet is different. The way we wash the dishes is different.
How do you flush the toilet in the Philippines?
Oh, I mean, you want to know?
Yeah, tell me.
You get a bucket. So in America, you press a button, right? In the Philippines, most of the time, if you're in like a not so rich community, you get a bucket and then you pour it in as much water as you can, so it will flush, or else it gets stuck. So
tell people who have never heard about it before. Tell them about the tabo.
Oh, the tabo. Yeah, it's interesting because in America, everyone was like freaking out. Oh, we don't have
no
toilet paper.
No toilet paper.
Yeah, and all that, and they're freaking out. Like in the Philippines, we have how do you describe? Can you help me describe it?
A tabo is like a scoop.
Like a scoop.
Like a small bucket, like a ladle.
We should put a picture in this.
Yeah.
And then you technically scoop water, and then you wash your buttocks with it.
That's also what people use to shower. They probably use a separate tabo.
Yeah.
But if you don't have running water for a shower, what do you do?
No. So usually you have a pump. I don't know what this is in English, but you have a pump, and then you get water from it, and then you shower from it. Yeah, technically that's how it looks like.
And then you just over your head, right?
Yeah, third world stuff, man. Yeah.
So not so bad. So when it comes to like the coronavirus and things like that, as far as like, oh, do I have toilet paper? Oh, do I have?
Yeah.
What do you like? What do I need?
During this time?
Yeah,
like rice.
You got rice and you're happy.
Yeah, I was like, as long as we have rice, we'll be fine. I think it's a different need. You know, when I went in the US, I was like, everyone is like, oh, this and that, tissue paper. But in the Philippines, just food.
Yeah.
Or sanitizer, I guess.
What makes someone decide to give up on the everyday comforts of a stable job and a roof over their head? What causes someone to choose this kind of lifestyle? Well, for Jasper, it was nothing short of a miracle.
So when I was 17 years old, they discovered a tumor in the left side of my brain. It was perfectly normal. Everything was normal. You know, I was living life, watching all these TV shows, movies, and it was perfectly normal. Then I slept that night right before my enrollment for the second semester of my biology years I took biology when I was in college. Then I woke up in the hospital. A doctor came out and said, hey, you had a severe seizure. And my family thought I was possessed. So I was like, oh.
This is the Philippines. This is still a place where...
And my grandma, my grandma actually took my shirt that I used that night, and she gave it to a necromancer, or like a someone who identifies whatever, you know, spiritual stuff, supernatural
and
stuff.
her idea is like, if I give it to him, maybe he can help.
Yeah, and then he like performed some voodoo stuff, some stuff, and then he found out that she said that someone was in love with me. Oh, and they
put a spell.
Yeah, they put a spell. Something like that. So
that's a twisted kind of love.
Yeah,
they put a spell on.
I don't know what happened, but anyways, went to the doctor and they had I had an MRI scan and they found a tumor in the left side of my brain.
Wow, how big was the tumor?
It was very small, but anything alien in your brain is dangerous.
It's not a good idea.
So that's not supposed to be there, right?
Okay, so they discovered the tumor. What happens next?
And what happened next was my father came up and said, "Hey, you should stop going to school. You know, you should rest." So I rested for about a year. Then my father came up and he asked me he said, "I think God is calling you to be a pastor." And I was like, what? What? Like maybe in his mind, you know, this could like, oh, you're maybe dying anyways, you know, you dedicate your life to God. I'm not sure what his motive was, but you know.
Is the thinking that if you become a pastor, maybe God will have mercy on you?
Yeah, maybe your works will. I'm not sure. But anyways.
Either way, he says you're supposed to become a pastor in an Asian culture.
Yeah, you don't have any choice if you have an Asian parent. You know, your father probably is a little bit flexible because he's from America, but my parent is... You don't have any choice. You know, so they say you're a nurse, you're a nurse. Yeah. You know? So you have no choice. Yeah. So I went to school as a pastor, and by the grace of God, I found my faith there and found God. After that situation, man, I was just, because I was very scared during that time. You know, when you're 17, you have a lot of dreams. You know, and during that time, I was like, man, I'll be confined in the hospital because anytime you have a seizure. Right?
Yeah. And you can't drive a car. You can't do anything. Yeah. Sports, maybe.
Yeah, and it's all dangerous. If I drive, but
that's true. You don't drive right now.
but I can't do all these stuff anymore. But in fact, the doctor said you can't travel outside the island because you know you must be under our jurisdiction. Anything happens, you come to the hospital, and all that kind of stuff. So I was very scared, and that limited almost everything that I do. But I've started to say, hey, I just want to full send, give it all to God. And I started praying. And during that time, it was a miracle. I've never had any seizures. Yeah, I never had any seizures. Studying the Bible, fell in love with studying the Bible. People came to teach me the Bible and start to see the beauty of it. Yeah, and I start to find my calling. Preach in the girls' dorm, preach in the boys' dorm.
Why do you say girls' dorm first?
Because that was the first place I've ever preached in. Because I know the boys will judge me because I've been doing a lot of stupid stuff in school. So the girls, they kind of don't know me. But anyways, and I found my calling. And every 6 months we would go to the doctor, and the doctor would come up and say the tumor is getting smaller. It's kind of weird. The tumor is getting smaller. 3 times I had my MRI, and I think the 4th time the tumor was completely gone. Wow. No medication. No change of diet. I was not a vegetarian. I was not healthy during that time, so I can't say, oh, it's because of my diet. Nothing, but it was gone. So it's all miracle. And so if you ask me how this fuels me during the situation, like literally right now, we don't know what we're going to do next week or tomorrow. We're literally zero because of what happened. Our schedules are all gone. But God's just giving me hope all the time. Just look back at what I've done for you before.
Yeah, I love that idea. This idea that if you can have a memory of what God has done in the past, Like that actually strengthens you
Yeah.
moving forward.
Yeah. Every time I hear a sermon or every time I read a Bible verse, when the rubber meets the road or when the chips are down, everything sometimes goes into science fiction mode. Like, really.
What do you mean?
Like,
Like what if this is all made up science fiction?
When I had that tumor in the left side of my brain, all I did was just read God's promises.
Okay.
And sometimes when I read it, it becomes just, okay, it happened in the past, but I'm sure it will not happen to me. So even now, I struggle with that. Like, oh, is God really gonna deliver me? You know? But so there's no amount of pep talk really could like change my mind. You know?
So if it's not about pep talk, if it's not about just like encouraging yourself, then what makes the difference?
The whole time, man, I'm just talking to God and just, Lord, help me and help my unbelief. Because even though I've been through all this, I still don't trust God. Remember the story in the Bible where they met the demoniac in Mark chapter 5?
Yeah.
And as soon as they met the demoniac, they run away and they left Jesus. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why were they afraid? Like that
Because there's a demoniac in front of them.
Yeah, right. I mean, technically. But Jesus was with them. Like the same God who was like an hour ago calmed the storm, he stood up and said, "Peace, be still."
Yeah.
But why were they running? Like the same God who fed the 5,000, technically. The same God who healed the sick. The same Jesus who technically healed the blind man. But why were they running? Like the same question you're asking me now.
Yeah.
Like what's wrong with you? You know?
So what's the
I think
reason?
it's a human tendency. When you have fear, an automatic result is to run away. Like an automatic result, an automatic impulse of every human when something comes suddenly is to run away. And I think many of us Christians, or as far as I am, because I'm a Christian, as what I have observed, I've seen people, their automatic response to Corona is just to run away. Fear. You know, you're forgetting that Jesus promised that he will be with you. And so during the situation, I'm just asking the Lord, please remind me.
Yeah.
You know, remind me of the past. Just remind me of what you have done in the past. As you have delivered me in the past, I'm sure you will deliver me in the future. And I'm just saying, Lord, please help my unbelief.
What would you say to someone who maybe hasn't had that? Like they never had a brain tumor that got miraculously healed. They never were in an airplane that was doomed for, you know, a crash, but then they were saved. They never went to North Korea and with like, what do you say to someone who's never had that testimony? They can't think of a moment in the past where God was there, and they might aren't even sure that God's there at all to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful question, man. I think that's a question that we need to consider, because not like as what you've said when we were talking about this, you're like, not everyone had that testimony, you know. And if you want to make it practical, that's I guess it's such a sobering thought to think about. I personally think if someone hasn't even had any experience of God at all, just to try God and say, Lord, I haven't experienced you before.
Well, I guess this kind of brings us back to when you had the tumor.
Yeah, I've never had that experience. Yeah,
never had
that's true.
Never had an experience before. Never like found God or anything like that.
Yeah, but all I prayed during that time is just to, Lord, please help my unbelief. I do not believe you. Just help my unbelief. And the Lord delivered, man, his word. And I realized that God's promises is not dependent on what we feel.
What do you mean?
Because sometimes we think that in order for God to fulfill that promise, we need to really believe. You know, we need to really, the more we believe, the more God will deliver.
Are you saying that the more that you believe, the more God will move? Like, are you saying that that's not true?
Yeah. For me personally, I've realized that even though I don't feel like it, I'll just say, Lord, I don't feel like it. I don't feel like it. You got to do something about this.
Wow.
I'm being honest with God.
Yeah.
And sometimes we paint a picture of God as someone who's, in order for your prayers to be answered, you need to be in a certain level. Right? You need to be in a certain fast, or you need to be, and I believe that there's a blessing of being faithful and to trust in God, but not everyone has the same level of trust. Now, when I had my tumor in my brain, I never had the level of trust that people required me to have. I cannot fast. I don't know how to pray. And I don't have a genuine relationship with God. But I told God, Lord, I don't know, you heal me or not. But you said here, and I claim you in that promise. I don't believe you, but you said this.
Wow.
So it's a great challenge, for especially for me during that time. I really had any experience with God, no experience with Him. But I said, hey, you promised, you got to do something about this.
To say that we're living in uncertain times would be an understatement. And maybe you're having a hard time figuring out what your relationship with God looks like through all the chaos. But Jasper's experience reminds me of a powerful verse that I think speaks to this. Romans 8:26-28 says, "The Holy Spirit helps us in our weakness." For example, we don't know what God wants us to pray for, but the Holy Spirit prays for us with groanings that cannot be expressed in words. And the Father, who knows all hearts, knows what the Spirit is saying, for the Spirit pleads for us believers in harmony with God's own will. And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose for them. So that's where we want to leave you with today. Even if you don't have the words figured out, even if your future is uncertain, or you, like Jasper, have stepped out in faith and suddenly you find yourself facing difficult circumstances, know this, that God is acting on our behalf. Our loving Father sees you, He hears you, and He knows the plans that He has for your life. So as we step forward into the days ahead, let's keep that in mind.